May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic suffering, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Jiryu Rutschman-Byler, abiding abbot of the Green Gulch Farm. We're going to talk about the upcoming book of Shunryu Suzuki lectures, Becoming Yourself, that Mel Weitsman worked on and that Jiryu worked on, and especially after Mel died. But before Mel died, too, he was working with Mel on it because, as he points out, Mel needed help. Anyway, it's being published by Random House by Treasure or something. What do they call that when it's part of a publishing house? An imprint of Random House. It's coming out in July 15th. Let me see if it's written here what the publisher is besides Random House. Oh, yeah, Tarcher. That's a funny name, huh? Tarcher. I wouldn't have named a business that. Pardon me. Anyway, here, let me read you what it said. I'm just at the San Francisco Zen Center page for Jiryu, and let me just read what it says there. Jiryu Rutschman-Byler is a Soto Zen Buddhist priest and teacher in the lineage of Shunryu Suzuki Roshi now, I'm going to stop here. You know why I don't say the word Roshi? Why call Suzuki Roshi and not Jiryu? I mean, he's the abbot. I mean, and Sojun, my God. Sojun, he was abbot of Berkeley until he was like 90, 91 or something. So, having lived in Japan and being aware of the use of honorifics that you need to, if you do it for one person, you do it for another, and then it's like talking about levels. Well, that's why I just don't use it. I stay away from honorifics. Sometimes I let Suzuki Roshi slip out, or Baker Roshi slip out, or Kwang Roshi slip out. Those are the three that go way back. But really, I try to stay away from it. So anyway, pardon me. He's priest and teacher in the lineage of Shunryu Suzuki with Dharma transmission from Sojun Mel Weitsman. Jiryu has trained residentially in Zen temples since 1996 and currently serves as a co-abbot of San Francisco Zen Center through his role of abiding abbot of Green Gulch Farm Zen Center. Jiryu is the co-editor of a new collection of talks by Suzuki Roshi, Becoming Yourself, forthcoming in July 2025. He is also author of the book Two Shores of Zen. And I bring that up toward the end of the podcast talk about his experiences in 2002 to 4 as an American-trained monk practicing in Japanese Zen monasteries, and his writing has appeared in Buddhist periodicals in print and online. Jiryu is a mentor and preceptor to the Montaña de Silencio Sangha in Medellin, Colombia. Far out, I didn't know that. And for Many years served as the head teacher of the Buddha Dharma Sangha of San Quentin State Prison. He holds a master's degree in Asian Studies from UC Berkeley, 2014, where he worked under the mentorship of the Group in Buddhist Studies on Buddhist Texts in Classical Chinese and Modern Japanese, and completed thesis research on the development of Soto Zen in Japan during the Meiji period, 1868 to 1912. Wow, impressive. You know, I say at the end of the podcast, I want to do another one with you. We cover a lot of ground, and we don't have any trouble talking together, so I think that'd be good. But this one's pretty good. At first, we talk a little bit about Zen Tatsu Richard Baker's stroke that he had a week ago at Green Gulch. And Nicole Baden was supposed to give the lecture, and Zen Tatsu had it right before the lecture, and they had to hop to it, Green Gulch and Nicole getting him right to a hospital, which is important. And Jiryu talks about what was that, and then he gave the lecture instead of Nicole. But we talk about that a little bit at first. But look, let's just get to it. Let's give Jiryu a call, and see what he has to say. Hey, Jiryu, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. Before we move on to becoming yourself and about yourself, you just had quite an event at Green Gulch with Richard Baker having that stroke. So how did you experience that?
Yeah, thanks for asking about Baker Roshi. It was really special, David, to have him here at Green Gulch, him and Nicole. It's been really wonderful and healing these last few years, really, that they've reconnected and have been coming by Green Gulch and meeting with the Sangha in different ways and offering teachings. And we were ready they were a couple weeks at City Center and then came here to Green Gulch, and Nicole was going to offer the Dharma talk on Sunday at Green Gulch, and that morning, right after breakfast, I actually had a long tea kind of at Soji time with Baker Roshi. We had a wonderful chat about the state of the Dharma. And then apparently a little while after breakfast, he just had a stroke and was kind of unable to speak. And Nicole expressed a lot of appreciation for the Green Gulch staff, who were sort of able to be awake and alert enough to get help quickly, because apparently when they got to the hospital, they said it was really important that you got here when you did. The sooner you can catch that, the better.
They say that about strokes. I always hear that. You get as quick as you can to a hospital.
Yeah. So then it seemed like there was a day or two there where he just wasn't saying anything. And then apparently I haven't seen him since that morning when we were having tea together. But apparently now he has some words back, and it sounds like it's not always the words that he is expecting. Somebody said it's an interesting sort of study, and I don't know how the brain works and the hemispheres or whatever, but just that he kind of has some access to like Dharma, but not to like a lot of mundane things. So someone was saying, trying to say something like my watch and needing to talk about some kind of like space and time and
he's a little bit that way to begin with. But
maybe so.
Yeah, I think it's improving, what I hear. Mm-hmm. I've heard some things he said that sound good. But also with strokes, there's frequently, quite coming back to more like normal or a healing afterwards. I mean, if you read Lou Richmond's Raising Lazarus,
Right.
he went from complete coma to, totally almost vegetative to childlike to coming back to, I don't know, he seemed pretty normal to me. I've done several podcasts with him and related to him a lot, but he'd say 90% now or something. So,
Well, it seems like Bikaroshi's on that track. They think he's going to recover well, and so that's very encouraging.
yeah, and he certainly has a lot of support, and his family is so close with him, his daughters and his ex-wives too. And
Seem,
they've started this caring page for him, and that'll be good. All right. So
yeah, he was reflecting. When he was here visiting Green Gulch, staying in the ranch house, he said, "Oh, I had this house brought over from Japan." He was feeling really at home because literally it had been, his house. Not only that he lived in here at Green Gulch, but also when he was in Japan, he brought parts of the house over and had them rebuild it here at Green Gulch.
well, now wait a minute. Where was he staying at Green Gulch?
Well, what we call the ranch house.
Well, the part that was brought over
Yeah.
was the tea house,
Uh-huh.
right across from the ranch house. Maybe he got some pieces in the ranch house. I
may-
can't right now think what pieces those would be because I worked in there. I worked in there while he was abbot, and I was a geisha for a year there. But more or less the same.
I think maybe the Tokonomo kind of pillar and maybe the doors. Some pieces I think we're familiar. Yeah. So that was your Green Gulch time was as Jisha for him.
I was work leader and geisha for him in 73. That was the only year I lived at Green Gulch until 85, 86.
So really that first year of Green Gulch.
Yeah, second year, 73.
Second year.
But I was around I was work leader in the city in 72, so I was at Green Gulch, quite a bit. It was a cool place to go. And also after that, I had a place at Avon's because my ex-wife Daya was, had a place at Muir Beach, and I lived in Bolinas. And anyway, enough of that.
Okay.
So before we get into the important topic, I want to say one other thing. The opening of the Dharma Academy must have been, Dharma Sangha's Dharma Academy with the event they're having this weekend must have been affected. Do you know anything about that?
It's still on. Yeah, I'm on one of the panels that's on Sunday, and they've said it's still on. I think the change is Nicole's not going to be in Crestone. They're still staying at City Center.
Right.
But I think for the whole online component, it's pretty much unchanged.
Yeah.
So they're going to go ahead. Yeah.
Well, except Zen Tatsu won't be participating. He's,
Who knows?
What I get from Nicole, I can see it. I can just see it. You can see it in the photos. Is that he's rolling with it? She said it's almost like he's enjoying it, and a great attitude. So what are you doing these days? What are you up to? You've got a position there at Green Gulch at Zen Center.
I I do have a position, it seems, and it's kind of dawned on me at this point. I'm about 2 years in to being the abbot here at Green Gulch, abiding abbot of Green Gulch and co-abbot of San Francisco Zen Center. You know, there's three of us
Yeah.
now, sort of sharing that abbacy. So mostly, I'm kind of abiding here at Green Gulch, taking care of the sangha here, and then you have various issues related to Zen Center as a whole.
Mm.
I take care of. So yeah, when I first stepped in, a couple years ago, it was very strange to be sitting in that seat, and I felt like maybe there had been some mistake, and I was just sort of the crazy person, that everybody was indulging, and at some point, the sheriff would come and just sort of walk me off the site. But so far, they haven't. Everybody is going along with the show, with the premise that I'm the abbot, and yeah, and it's at an amazing time for Zen Center, amazing time for Green Gulch, where now, over the last year and a half or so, we lost just these pillars of the Green Gulch community, these elders, Emila, Miksuki, Mea, Fu, Sonia, and now this summer, in just a couple months, Linda and Steve and Reb and Rusa are departing. So
Reb,
being abbot here at Green. Mm-hmm.
I wish Linda and Steve and Reb and Rusa could stay. It seems to me it's good to have a multi-generational thing going. I can see, of course, it's getting lopsided. But anyway, that's how I feel.
Yeah, well, you're not alone in feeling that. It's been a lot for the Sangha to absorb, a lot of feelings of why are we sure we want to, have the elders leave. And yeah, it's all a good question. And I feel it's all been well considered, and mostly grateful that they'll have good care and be in a good place. Mostly the people who have moved on from Green Gulch to Enso Village, even some of them that were dubious, about having to leave, have really been enjoying Enso Village for the most part.
Yeah.
It's felt like a good kind of fresh community for people, a little bit free of whatever were carrying here. Certainly like the burden of caring for a Sangha, but of course that also brings fulfillment too. So it's been wonderful. A number of them have stayed around, and we certainly hope, Reb and Linda also, come around and continue to lead events and give talks and to stay kind of present, supporting the community.
Yeah.
But so that's a huge change, for better or for worse, whether it was the wise or unwise thing to do. It's where we're at, and so being abbot during this big sort of generational shift, kind of the founders handing it over,
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
And that's why, and we don't need to segue now, but just in terms of this work with Suzuki Roshi, I think that's maybe part of why Suzuki Roshi, like the study of Suzuki Roshi, has been so important to me, is kind of like, okay, being entrusted here, and the people who, knew him and practiced with him are moving on, and just to confirm my understanding, or to make sure that I'm aligned with and understanding sort of this lineage and this ancestor and the thing that, all of you all have worked so hard to preserve.
Yeah. Well, that's an impossible task for any of us, but that's what we do.
Yes.
So tell me about becoming yourself.
Thank you. Yeah. Becoming yourself is what we decided to call this new book of Suzuki Roshi's teaching, Becoming Yourself, Teachings on the Zen Way of Life. I'm holding a galley proof here. It's been very exciting to see this come together. This, Mel, of course, had worked on various Suzuki Roshi talks over the years. He really felt close to Suzuki Roshi's teachings and had involvements in the he supported, not always so, and then he worked on the branching streams flow in the darkness. And so he had this kind of project on his shelf. He had a couple folders of these bits of Suzuki Roshi that he had wanted to bring together into a book at some point over the years. So he had sort of started and not made much progress in that project. And at some point, Ed Sadazan, who I'm sure you know, who was the central abbot of Zen Center at the time, you probably remember from the older days, suggested to Mel that he kind of bring me on to help him kind of get organized, and get the book going.
Yeah.
And I was working with Mel. I did Dharma transmission with Mel, so we were close, and just sort of took up this project together, and it was really amazing to work with him on it. Mostly just reading Suzuki Roshi together and sort of sharing our thoughts about it and moving words around and seeing kind of what made it crystallize. A lot of this kind of, when you read the transcripts, as you well know, it can be kind of hard to follow. It really benefits from the kind of editing and polishing.
Right. Suzuki didn't want what I've done with my many people is to make the verbatim available, and our default on ShunryuSuzuki.com is the least edited, but we have every edited version we can find, and people learn pretty quickly. I mean, there are people that are into the unedited, but the edited ones really work better for general use.
They can crystallize something in a different way. A lot of them are kind of long, and they're kind of, it's amazing how he comes back to the point. He often goes off on some tangent. You're like, is he still following the thread? And sometimes he's not, but sometimes he really is, and kind of brings it back home.
Yeah.
One of the things in this one that I'm proud of or happy with is, feel good about, I'd say, is that in the back we have a kind of index of chapter sources. So like, okay, this chapter comes from the original talk, which was given, whatever, June 1971 at Tassajara. So they can go find it, on Quk.com and wherever else to get
ShunryuSuzuki.com.
ShunryuSuzuki.com, yeah. So the idea being, as we edit, I mean, Mel was pretty confident in his editing, pretty strong. Sometimes it's like you're really sort of changing things around and to bring out the point that he's making and to try to use his own words. But so then the feeling is like, well, if you're curious about this or this chapter engaged you, then maybe you want to consider looking up the source and then going, here's the index pointing you to that.
Yeah. Well, I support Mel in doing that. That's, the way I look at it, we can have different people's editings. Richard Baker would change things somewhat. Actually, if you look at the verbatim, the four are very closest to verbatim, or Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. A lot of it's very close, but there's some changes. But those particular lectures were less challenging. I think were much more simple and clear and direct. They were very short. The ones that you all worked on are much more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And even in some of those, they were less edited, and still some of the editing decisions, really clarify, really brought it out. I don't know if that was Trudy Dixon or Baker Roshi, but that is a beautifully edited book.
Yeah.
Mind, Beginner's Mind.
Well, it was both of them. I'd say it's mainly her, but he worked on it, and and they'd go over it with Suzuki. But how much attention Suzuki paid, I don't know, because there were mistakes in it, and that were little by little cleared up. And there's some Russian translators that were the most finicky, detailed-oriented people I have ever dealt with, who pointed out, and I have all their stuff on, that's on Cuke.com in the Zen Mind Beginner's Mind section. But they pointed out a few places where the editing, in their opinion, and I had to agree, wasn't right. That it went away from the original in a way that sort of lost the original meaning. But those had, a couple of paragraphs or something, out of the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm sure that people will find that issue in the new book, and I've also found that in different places. Once you start comparing, you say, especially these things that we read over and over, we read over and over and we study them so deeply. And then you see, like when you're really with it, you see, oh yeah, I would have made a different editing choice here. Another way that we're trying to kind of, for me, sort of present some of Suzuki Roshi's own words is this other piece that I'm excited about, which is the audiobook. The audiobook for Becoming Yourself. Peter Coyote's going to read. And then at the end, we're going to do like half an hour, 40 minutes of remastered original audio of Suzuki Roshi, kind of the original versions of some of the chapters that are in Becoming Yourself.
Good.
So I think that's going to be very cool. Of course, all that audio is on there, just like all the transcript is on there, but it's not really bite-sized, to listen to the whatever, how many thousands of hours, hundreds of hours at least. So just to have half an hour of, and well-edited clips, of just 5 minutes or 3 minutes where he's being very kind of clear. And
yes, yeah. And
so
Charlie Wilson will do that?
Yeah, they've done this amazing work remastering, so the quality of those has gone up quite a bit, now they've made it more crisp. And then this team at Penguin Random House that has the book, and they have a whole kind of audio production side. So that's sort of on their desk at this point. I'm not, we've given them the clips and they're excited to move forward with it, but I haven't heard exactly what they come up with.
Yeah. Well, it's going to, of course, you're really into computers and AI and everything. It's in a while they'll be able to make it crystal clear, just like it sounded. Actually, they can make it too crystal clear. They should really make it sound like it was in the room in the Zendo,
Well, and with the AI, it even came up, we didn't but it didn't come up seriously, but it did come up like, well, we could just have Suzuki Roshi read the edited book, with the AI voice cloning, the audio editing, especially with the AI, is not necessarily that different than the text editing, but it kind of crosses a line for me. I'm happy to edit the text, the transcript, but editing the voice is like, I haven't gotten there.
I think Peter Coyote's reading will probably work better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I find, many people find, just listening to a little bit of Suzuki speaking gives you that feeling, and then you can read it. But different people are different ways. I've talked to people that have listened, and this is years ago when it was less, the quality was less, listened to every single one, including the ones where you can't understand it. Really.
I don't know. I imagine, what was it like? Right? But what was it like to sit there? And I'm barely following this. I'm reading the transcript carefully, with my cup of tea, taking all the time I need. And I have no idea what he's talking about. And people, sitting in the audience, kind of half understanding. But I guess it's just the presence, of course, just that embodied presence and that.
There was no talk about what, not understanding or what did he say, or any of that. But at least in my experience, I don't remember talking about his lectures much. You just go to him, and he'd say, well, you can fall asleep. It's probably better, to take it in that way. And he didn't make a big deal out of me. It was sort of like, this is for now sort of thing, right? And that's why so many weren't. The recording wasn't done before Marion Derby started at 65 and immediately started in the city, is because people thought, well, this is for the moment and it's not right to record it. And even when they recorded it, if you look at some of those reel-to-reel tapes, the early recording, which they should have continued and went to much cheaper, like office cassette machines, on the box, it'll be written, this one has been recorded. It can be, this one has been transcribed. It can be recorded over.
Just delete it now. We don't need it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things that's so special about listening, which I'm happy to have the audio original because it was hard to figure out how to express in the transcripts. As soon as you write it down, it's like, it seems very final, or like he really meant it, or like it's just in black and white there, like a thing he said that he must have meant. And in some kind of literal way, or in some kind of fixed way, or even in a rigid way. Whereas when you hear him talking, there's just so much lightness and humor, and he's always kind of turning, and it's got this playful quality.
Right.
So that's part of the challenge of editing, is like,
right.
Yeah, sometimes he's saying something that's funny because it's like like, well, you all should do what I say, kind of thing, And if you don't know that he's laughing, it's like, wow, this guy was a nut. So that
very
how
true.
to kind of bring that kind of humor. So then Mel had said, we should keep all the places where it says laughing. We should let people know he's laughing here.
Yeah.
But it's hard. That kind of then in the book, it kind of interrupts it. So we decided not to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping with the audio where you can hear, he's sort of like, he's just being there with people, and he's saying things, and he's turning it, and it's light. And
well, like you talked about in the audio book, you can throw in some of that where he's saying things and he's laughing and people are laughing. You go, oh. And because just a little bit of that will inform the person. They'll hear it all differently, I think, as a result of that. Yeah, I think you made a really good point there. Like when you read it, when it's in the written word, it takes on a sort of, great importance, like this is his teaching now. But when you listen to it, and the way it was more is you sort of, well, let me throw this out, Let's see. And, like he said, he can't really, the truth can't be spoken. He can't really say it. He can just give hints. And basically, he saw everything written in Buddhism is just, again, something pointing, like the pointing at the moon.
And responding to something. That's what one of the points Baker Roshi was making right before his stroke when we were having tea together, that, when he reads these things, he kind of thinks like, oh, that was about this thing that had happened that afternoon, or then now he's talking because such and such a person, who's there in the assembly has this issue. So he's talking to him, and that sort of feeling of the context, rather than like, this is the ultimate truth that I'm now laying down forever.
Yeah, well, there's one talk, it's an extreme example of that, where a guy had just gone super overboard and gone nuts with trying to follow all the Theravadan rules and the Zui-monkey strictness of Dogen. And he actually had a sort of, he'd been at AHG and he didn't eat any extra food like all the monks do, so he got malnutrition and he got beriberi, and so he was out of his mind. And he came to Tassajara like to recoup for a couple of days, but but he should have gone to a hospital, and he did afterwards. But Suzuki's lecture was, we're shameless. We break all the rules. Ha, ha, ha. We eat meat. We get married. Really, it was just unbelievable. And that was definitely for him, right?
Right. And right, for someone else, it would be, our rules are very strict. And
right.
So,
right. He would be, it would be on different sides of things all the time. I'm sure, of course, you notice. One of them that's interesting to me is like, well, in Zen, you go inside, right? No, there's no inside or outside. But you look at another lecture, our practice is to go inside, or, it'd be on completely different sides at different times.
Yeah, right. Just like the ancestors, just like Dogen Zenji, just like the koan collections. I mean, this is our teaching. Keep the wheel turning.
Yeah.
Don't get stuck, Keep it alive, beginner's mind.
Well, the 6 patriarchs told his disciples, all you have to do is when they're on one side, you go to the other.
Always bring up the opposite. Exactly. Yeah, I've loved that teaching as well. Or when you're on one side, go to the other as soon as you can after,
Right. And that reminds me of the line in the Bible, the Son of Man hath no place to lay his head. Right. I mean,
wonderful.
It's like
yep.
There's no right move.
Nowhere to hang your hat, nowhere to build your nest.
Richard said to me, or Zen Tots, I like calling him Zen Tots, a little less informal. He said to me a few years ago, how, he was just contemplating the six patriarch, the turning words he heard from the Diamond Sutra, no abode. And he was just, Zentatsu was just, he just said, just meditate on that, focus on that, think on that. And we were just talking casually, and he said that.
Thank you. Yeah. No place to stop and just to continue alive, fresh practice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, can I say more here? About
you can keep going all day. There's no time limit. I'm at like 10:40 in the morning, so I go all day.
Sounds okay. Well, so then I was sitting down with Mel, and we, of course, we have the all of that great work that you and so many people have done on the archive. This just absolute kind of mountain, This was kind of an image I have of just this mountain that we're just mining for jewels, There's so much in those transcripts. And so then Mel had the pieces that he had kind of clipped and liked, and then some things that had been in Wind Bells or Berkeley Zen Center newsletter, that kind of he had cherished. But he also had this idea, so apart from this kind of general talks on Zen that he had collected over the years, he felt like, this is Sojin, Mel Weitsman Roshi. He wanted to bring out this part about precepts, about Suzuki Roshi's understanding of precepts. And this was important to Mel. And I see, now having studied it, it was it's important to Suzuki Roshi, too, that people have the right idea about precepts, about the kind of the ground of our ethical practice. And so we wanted to kind of make that a theme. So then we sort of kind of dug around a little bit for talks about precepts, and I started that work with Mel, and then after he died, I sort of continued to try to really bring out that part of the theme. So where we ended up with this book is kind of like half of it is these general talks, kind of like in the style of Not Always So or Zen My Beginner's Mind. And then the second half or so is more like a collection of his teachings about precepts. And so I really wanted that to feature kind of, I want people to know that, because then this got, the book got picked up by this big editor, Penguin Random House imprint called Tarcher, and they've been amazing. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for Suzuki Roshi's teaching and for Zen
Yeah.
Center, to be like, because their vision is like, let's extend this wide. Suzuki Roshi is not just for Buddhists. It's not just for people who already know they're Buddhists. This is like really teaching for anybody who wants to be fully alive, wants to become themselves. So, but then that changes some of the more technical or the more kind of in-house kind of language, even like of precepts, The editor didn't like the word precepts. I'm saying, I think this book is about precepts. And he says, that sounds good, but I don't like the word precepts. So that's not in the subtitle. It's not in the subtitle, but it really is like a big part of what the book, what the second half of the book is about. And it's so important because Suzuki Roshi's way about this, as you know, is like the precepts are not about some kind of moral code or some kind of list of rules or like something intellectual, something that you're trying to like turn yourself into. Precepts are about you just becoming yourself, they're about you including everything and being zazen. And, the way I would say it is like just being in touch with your innate compassion and your innate intimacy with things and just acting, kind of living from zazen. So the point of the precepts is to live from zazen, not to like get into these one by one rules. And a lot of the precept teaching, the precept study that's out there does end up kind of, because it's easy to do so, kind of falls into this like one by one teaching of the things you're supposed to do and the things you're not supposed to do. And Suzuki Roshi again and again is saying, please don't think about the precepts that way. I mean, sure you can. It's good to follow these rules, but the heart of it, is zazen. It's a way to extend our zazen practice. So that has been very refreshing to work on, and I'm really glad to have those kind of this sort of sustained kind of meditation on precepts as zazen, precepts as our original nature, precepts not as a moral code. To have that out there, for Zen students who want to study precepts to have that, and then we can all study them one by one and get into what we should do and shouldn't do. But he's talking about something totally different than that.
Yeah. Mel said to me once, he said, Suzuki Roshi thought that a literal understanding of the precepts was heretical.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Well,
he says that's basically breaking the precepts, if you're, and so for me, it's about, he says, and, when you become yourself, you include everything. Becoming yourself is including everything. So you're acting from this place, following the precepts, everything is included. So you're acting from this kind of like intimacy and then this warm-hearted zazen. And at that point, in that way, you're actually responding to what's present here with you in your life, and you're sort of following and trusting your innate wisdom and compassion to help you meet that situation. And if you're trying to like overlay on top of that some list of rules or list of things, ideas about things that you shouldn't do, you're going to be separating from the actual alive experience of being here in the situation that you're in. So it's kind of like getting the wrong part of your body going, It's like getting your head going and getting your stories going, as opposed to being in this embodied connection and letting the beneficial, kind of action come from that.
Right. Yeah.
So you said heretical. It's heretical to take them literally. So right? That was your words, because it's like pulling you from zazen, really. You're following a rule instead of following zazen.
Well, to me, literalism is the disease of religion. You can see how it screws up all religions, including Buddhism and Hinduism. It's impossible for people not to do it. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, it gets so extreme, and that can lead to a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm. He has a wonderful little piece about that. If you want, I could read it from the book.
Do.
Just
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
exactly that. About religion, which he talks about religion in this very like with a lot of reverence, like religion is just this very deep thing. And then he says, but if you make it literal, it becomes the worst thing, you know?
Mm.
Um, so yeah, this isn't the only theme. So I also want to talk, I want to look at this and then I want to ask you about this kind of the framing of this book, and this kind of concept of becoming yourself, like when you are you, Zen is Zen, and for you to just be yourself and that kind of aspect of the teaching that comes up so much in Suzuki Roshi. I'd love to hear, David, how you
All right.
see that. But first, so this section from the book in this chapter, beyond moral rules. So this to me is like encapsulates pretty well his precept teaching. So he's talking about different ways that you might misunderstand the precepts, what you might think they are. So you said we have time, so I'll just go ahead and read the
Oh,
section
yeah,
here.
absolutely.
So the 10 precepts are well understood as customs among human beings, sometimes as unwritten rules and sometimes as commandments or national laws. Precepts are made into laws to help us to observe them because they are difficult to observe. The problem is that when the precepts are understood just as laws, we may think we can find a way to violate them. If an attorney says we can violate them, then we can, and it is good. So then he says, another way that precepts are normally understood is as moral rules. Morality emphasizes the negative sense of the precepts. You should do this. You should not do that. But this understanding of the rules of human beings does not work properly because under moral rules, we have no freedom. The religious realm is different from laws or morality. Precepts in the religious realm are what we feel that we have to do or want to do instead of what we should do. When we say, I should, we're in the realm of moral rules. When we observe the precepts with the feeling that I cannot help doing so, or I have to, or I want to, we have the religious understanding of our rules. In this religious realm, we have freedom, but we need faith. We cannot obtain this kind of freedom without religious faith, without finding our inmost request. When we find our inmost nature or Buddha nature, we naturally understand the precepts both in the negative sense, we don't want to do anything wrong, and in the positive sense, we want to do something good. That is why we need precepts. And then here's the part.
I want to say one thing.
Please do, yeah.
The word faith.
Yes.
He usually avoided and would say it's confidence. But that's a whole discussion there.
Well, yeah, thank you. So he's saying, like, if you have this, if you're in the should, if you're in the kind of realm of moral rules or laws and you're thinking I should, then you don't really need faith, but you don't have any freedom. You don't have freedom to respond to situations because you're trapped, you're only supposed to do what these rules say. The faith, I think, that he's talking about, to have these rules based on like I want to, I can't help to. The way I think of this is like the little puppy, you don't have to have a rule that says don't kick the little puppy. You just don't want to. I don't want to. I'm in touch with my innate loving heart. Like, you don't have to tell me, it doesn't have to be a rule. But you need faith. You need faith in your Buddha nature in a way. You need faith that, I can trust that if I'm practicing Zazen, my action is going to be not harming. It's easier to trust this rule. The Buddha said, or Jesus said, or whatever. And if I do these 10 things, then I'm going to be a good person. It's like a little bit more of a leap of faith to say, I'm going to entrust myself to Zazen, to this kind of being present. And maybe it's not going to work. Maybe I'm going to kind of put my foot in my mouth or hurt somebody, but I'm trusting, I'm relying more on the faith that Zazen has what I need rather than these rules.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Suzuki Roshi felt that, or he taught that practice makes us want the right things. You know,
Uh-huh. Yes.
when you said the thing about the puppy, I have a friend here who's a Theravadan monk from America. He still wears his robes. He was many years in Myanmar. And he hired a woman to help him with something who had a very disturbed child. And my friend lives in a villa with a Balinese family, and they have some a new litter of dogs, and this kid killed one of the puppies. So that's a very disturbed person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's young. He was about 6.
Oh,
And he'd been over here, too, and I could really see it. And the mother, she was a single mother. She didn't know what to do. But anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the question. That's the faith. Can we trust that? So the wish to have kind of moral rules is like, well, but I don't know if I can trust myself. So then if I kind of grab onto these rules, and maybe I can trust them. So Suzuki Roshi, yeah, I totally agree. He's saying we have to practice, saying we have to do zazen. The point is not just like forget all about everything and just do whatever you want. The point is to practice really deeply zazen, and then let zazen be actually the foundation of your activity.
Yeah.
And that the self, there's another chapter in the book. There's a couple of chapters about desire, which relate to the precepts and I find very interesting. But like you say, we have to practice to want the right thing. One of the ways that he talks about that is we need to learn how to like extend our desire, broaden our desire. We have a selfish, self-centered desire, but the Buddha has a desire too. The Buddha's desire to liberate all beings is a wide desire. And so instead of like squash your desire or something, it's like make your desire even wider, make your desire for everyone. And but you have to practice to find that desire that's more than just a self-centered desire.
Right.
But yeah, trusting, he's saying, so when you are you yourself, the precepts are there. That to me does feel like a leap of faith. And you're bringing up this really powerful example. That's a horrifying example that really gives me pause, from using this image again of harming a puppy. But the sense that, can we trust that? Can we trust our loving self? Can we do a practice in order to touch that and then live from that? So it's not that I think there's a way to read this stuff of like, oh, don't follow the rules, like just do whatever you want kind of thing, that also totally misses the point. That's as bad as dogmatism in a way.
Yeah.
The point is you have to practice really sincerely, and then follow precepts from the basis of sincere practice of zazen, rather than from just nonsense self-centered desire or like dogmatic adherence to rigid rules.
Yeah. Faith is not adherence to any rules or any set of symbols, actually, anything conceptual, and that's the way it's thought of. Is that faith means you absolutely can't be talked out of attaching to this belief. Faith is not attaching to a belief. All right, but it is a great confidence, great faith. When you think of it in terms of leaping into the unknown, jumping off the 100-foot pole, or as in Christian mysticism, diving nakedly into the darkness. So that's
the embodied faith.
Yeah, that's embodied an understanding of faith that isn't a dirty word.
Yes. Yeah, faith in my Buddha nature, faith that actually by letting go of my thinking about right and wrong, I'm going to be more likely to do beneficial action.
Right.
That kind of faith. So, but then he talks about just this point. So going on in the same chapter, he says, religion, well, I'll read a little more here. In the religious realm, precepts extend to the kind of behavior that no moral rules or national laws can reach. Religion goes deeper than those. Religion brings you not only to certain demeanors or behaviors, but even to how to smile or how to blink your eyes. It should go that far. Religion is deeper and more real to us than laws or rules. Religion goes very deep, but if you understand religion in the same way that you understand rules or laws, then religion becomes very bad. It becomes terrible. When you look at religious practice in that way, it loses its faith and freedom, and religion becomes the worst thing that you have. If you believe in religion, you should believe in it from the bottom of your heart, or else religion is the worst thing of all to observe or believe in. In religious faith, we should have a complete freedom.
Yeah, that's
So
really
if you
good.
take the religion and hold it the same way you hold the laws or rules, it's like it would be better to not have anything, you know? And I
Yeah.
think that kind of dogmatic religion, that's part of what feels relevant about this book too, is like that Zen and that Suzuki Roshi's teaching is offering this kind of moral direction. Like, yes, we need to be living in compassion and kindness. The world needs that. And yet the people kind of like most yelling about morality, you know, are doing it in this dogmatic way that's not actually helping the world. So the
No,
sense of
no,
like
and
that
are
Zen,
involved with the most obvious immoral activity.
right, exactly the loudest insistence on morality kind of is has underneath it sort of the most corruption and depravity. So this sense of moral direction without any kind of dogmatism, moral direction based on becoming ourselves, become on practice of zazen.
Yeah.
So this thing he says about how is it that he puts it? To be yourself is the purpose of our practice and is the way to keep the Buddha's precepts. So you know all these expressions. So for me, this theme of this title of becoming yourself really landed for me because it kind of bridges. He also talks about zazen in the same way. Like zazen is just you being you on the cushion, you know, and then the way to extend zazen through the precept practice is for you to just be you and living your life. All these things he says, you know, when you are you, Zen is Zen. Or in the book, there's this great section where he's kind of paraphrasing and appreciating a teaching of Alan Watts. And he says, then Suzuki Roshi, in his own words, says, the point is to learn how to be yourself, how to be a person in the way that a stone is completely a stone.
Mm.
Love that. Just totally, thoroughly a person, just totally yourself. And it's a subtle and I think very cool teaching. And that when you're totally yourself, that includes everything. If you're not totally yourself, it doesn't include everything. Anyway, I wonder, this is would you agree this is like a theme or kind of from Suzuki Roshi's teachings, or how have you interacted with this thing of like when you are you, Zen is Zen, and the like just
I was dealing with it yesterday. You know, I've got a book coming out in September, right? Tassaro Stories, and I'm sort of getting the second volume of Tassaro Stories ready. And yesterday, I worked on a piece specifically about him saying, when you become yourself or something, you know, the phrase becoming yourself. I worked on it, and I created a character who is exactly like somebody who's been at Zen Center, was involved in Theravada Buddhism, just completely dismissed Suzuki because his use of the word self. So I bring that up. I do very little of that where I'm taking something that existed there and creating a character because the real character wasn't really there. Anyway, but that his use of the word self is very interesting because he, you know, he often would talk about the silly self or how, of course, there is no self or whatever. But then he'd say, you know, Della Gertz said Suzuki Roshi's teaching would be yourself.
Hmm. That was her summary. That was her summary as well.
Right.
Hmm.
And you know, it's like he said, if it's not paradoxical, it's not Buddhism.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
But those are different uses of the word.
right. Yeah, exactly. And it's not, they're different and they're the same. You know, it's not like it'd be too much to say it's big self and small self, although you could maybe kind of go there, or, you know, capital self and lowercase self. It's
Right.
because it has this ordinary, it's just the ordinary, it's that the ordinary, this ordinary being alive is like totally ungraspable
Yeah.
and boundless and
Yeah.
like impossible.
Right.
And so, sure, yeah, it's just you yourself, but like, what is that? Um, I could read a little bit here where he's one of the places where he's talking about becoming yourself,
Yeah.
because I think it gets to that, and he's kind of talking about like what it is to actually be yourself, and then a little bit about what it is to not be yourself. Um, but I'm also just in the koan. I think it's a wonderful like I'm not a self, you know. There's no self, but become myself, and then to become myself just as thoroughly. I feel so relaxed when I feel like to be me as thoroughly as a stone is just a stone. I just, and that then the precepts are going to be there too. Like you have what you need, you know, the intimacy with everything is there. Your innate kindness is there. You don't have to be anything other than you are. Just be yourself totally, thoroughly as a kind of practice. I find that so subtle and deep and inspiring and relaxing, even though it's kind of like kind of nonsense thing to say, you know? I mean, it's like, how could you not be? And yet there's a practice to actually be more fully yourself. Anyway, I can read this. I can read
Yep.
this bit. Um,
You bet.
so our way of sitting is for you to become yourself. Katagiri Roshi always says to settle oneself on oneself, to be yourself. When you become you yourself, at that moment your practice includes everything. Whatever there is, it is part of you. You practice with everyone in the future and in the past. That is our practice. But when you do not become yourself, it doesn't happen in that way. When you sit, you are sitting with everything, including animate and inanimate beings. Dogen Zenji said that if your practice doesn't include everything, it is not real practice. You may think that after practicing for a long time, you will attain enlightenment, and that then your practice will include everything and everyone. But actually, your practice already includes everything. If you think that in 2 or 3 years, after your practice improves, then your practice will be perfect enough to include everything, that is a mistake. Something is missing in that understanding. The sincerity is missing. When you practice forgetting yourself, forgetting where you are and how long you have been here, then your practice includes everything. When you say, I practice Zazen at Zen Center, I and Zen Center are extra. You are limiting your practice by the idea of Zen Center or my practice. When you say my practice, the practice is very small. When you say Zen Center, the practice is very limited. When you forget all about those kinds of ideas and just practice, then at that time your practice is perfect and includes everything past, present, and future. That is the point of practice.
Mm.
So when you forget, I mean, I guess it's Dogen Zenji too, right? When you forget yourself, when you forget all about everything you think about yourself, then you are you yourself and you include everything.
Mm.
So it's not about like being some idea of myself or like acting like I think Jiryu would act or something. It's about forgetting, you know, everything and including everything. And then I can understand better, like, oh, right, if I forget everything and that's including everything, then action from that basis would be intimate, would be beneficial and kind and harmonized. Do you remember this like settle yourself on yourself?
Oh, yeah,
That,
definitely.
yeah, was that, he says that's category.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of one of his slogans maybe, or,
Well, he went through, yeah, he got into it for a while, moved on to other stuff.
chewed on it till it
I,
wore out, till
I
the
don't know, he
flavor
might have
came out of the
repeated
gum.
it, but I definitely associate it with him. Yeah, well, that's the sort of thing that a lot of people would go, well, he doesn't understand Buddhism. There's no self.
Right, right.
You, in Advaita Vedanta, or Advaita Vedanta, as some of the people here say, if you look at what Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta and those folks say, it goes way back in Hinduism, is the sense of self that we have, that sense that I exist, is the fundamental feeling that all beings have. And that sense of self is the absolute, and I said to Zentatsu one day at Tassajara, maybe when I was Shuso, we walked up to the ashes site, and just him and me, I don't know what we were doing there. We walked back, or maybe when I was director, I don't know. At some point I said, well, I don't know. All I know is that I'm here. And he said, that's right. Yeah, he liked that. And very little that I said would get that. Yeah, it's
That's
interesting. And what's interesting is that one of the infinite number of things that are interesting is, Buddhism. What distinguishes Buddhism is a rejection of the idea of Atman and Anatman, there being like Suzuki Roshi, it was really big in I'd say before in the 60s, big self and little self. So we have to find our big self and little self. Well, what is that? That's just sounds like Atman and non-Atman, and Buddha nature. The term Buddha nature they use and Dogen used. It's impossible not to create, as Suzuki would say, tentatively, something that sounds like an object or something that is substantial or permanent or something. You know what I mean? It's impossible to write or talk about fundamental spiritualism, religion, whatever you want to say, without seemingly breaking the rules of the Buddhism.
You're calling it something.
Yeah, so it's like there's both sides.
Here's a way. So we have another kind of like feeling this also. So it's like all these chapters, about self, and then the becoming yourself, self everywhere, self everywhere. So then there's this chapter, no self, where he's saying basically, well, he says in Buddhism we use the word self, but actually Buddhism does not have the concept of self. We emphasize no self. No self means to see things as it is. Things as it is no self. When we are not caught by ideas of self, we can see things as it is. And then existing as we are, So we exist, but we exist as we are, not as a self. To live in that kind of way is the purpose of our practice. So like when you say, I'm here, that's a kind of, it's some kind of expression of just this immediate sort of subjective or from the inside kind of feeling of like something's happening, something's happening here, you know. It's that as we exist as we are, as it is, you know, things as it is. And then he says, this is so good. The main purpose of our practice is to realize what we are and what things are in a true sense. On your black cushion, when you find yourself in its true sense, you exist there. That you exist there means that everything exists in the same way that you exist. The way you exist on your black cushion is the way each thing exists in its own position. So anyway, yeah, he's using self or not self, but it's not about any ideas, you know. It's about things as it is. It's about suchness. It's about like nobody's saying nothing's happening. Well, sometimes we say that too. But anyway.
Yeah. Actually, he did say that. He did say that. He was very concerned about the fate of the earth. He was concerned about environmental destruction, especially toward the end of his life, especially after his last trip to Japan. And he said, but if the whole world ends, nothing has happened. So there's your two sides.
Yeah, not attached to Zen, not attached to Zen Center, not attached to Earth, I guess. But totally here at Zen Center, totally here on the Earth, doing the best we can, but letting it come and go, not knowing what it is.
Yeah. You know, there used to be a criticism of religion that it made people not want to take care of the earth, all right, not deal with problems. Like, well, everything's empty, so it doesn't matter, that sort of thing. It's the opposite. When you start experiencing things as they are, you see like you say, you want to take care of it. You want to do your duty. You want to you're concerned. You feel suffering. So it is not the end of action. It is not the end of right action.
Exactly. Yep. This kind of practicing Zazen as kind of the basis, and then life flowing from there is, like he says, the precepts are how we extend Zazen into our life. And like you say, it's not so becoming more intimate with things as it is, with life itself. It's not so much that I should do something to save the earth or something. It's just like I want to, or I can't help but to care for this thing that's in front of me, you know. And that's where he's saying kind of ideology or morality that would tell you you should, as opposed to this kind of like embodied practice, which puts you in touch with, oh, I want to care, I want to help, I want to act. So to say that because of emptiness you would stop acting or stop caring is like totally disembodied, totally out of touch with the actual experience of that intimacy, which leaves you with a feeling like, oh, I want to cherish and care for whatever's here.
Right. He incidentally,
you know,
he used the word should a lot, and it bothered people. But
maybe
I talked to
catching himself.
I talked to Peter Schneider about it, you know, who really had a, you know, he lived in Japan 20 years or something, and you know, did books in Japanese and had excellent Japanese, way beyond mine. But the English word should that he was using was used for several different types of constructions in Japanese, and it's a little difficult to talk about, but it's when he'd say you should do so and so. Sometimes it didn't mean it the way we think of should, but it's a little hard for me to think about it right now. I have to go
Well,
back.
or again here, if you know that he's always laughing, if you know that every couple words he's laughing, sure, he's telling you you should do something, but he's laughing, you know? I mean, it's not like, oh yeah, we should, or I should, or we all should, or yeah. So it's not that we shouldn't. I mean, it's should is also fine. But if the should is like actually disconnecting us from the I want to, then it's gotten kind of sick, you know, and needs some correcting.
Yeah. Well, I think what people didn't like is the idea when you look at it like there's some external
Right.
force or power or authority or rules saying you should do so and so.
Yeah.
It's not something external. And that's why you're talking about wanting to do it.
Right.
That's obviously internal. But of course, then he'd say, well, neither internal nor external.
Yeah. 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 And the rules, I mean, the rules of conduct, you know, there's this whole, like being limited by things is also kind of a theme that comes up so much in his teaching. And it very much in the book too, of this kind of like we find ourselves within a limitation. You know, we want to be free and not have rules and not have to have a form and whatever. But actually having rules, having a form is how we find ourselves. You know, he says you want to have the whole universe. Well, the way to have a whole universe is to like find yourself in the limitation of your small room, you know, of this formal practice where people are telling you, you know, do this, don't do that, put your leg like this, don't put your leg like that. Right in that limitation is where you'll find your true freedom and how the only way that you'll actually have access to the whole universe. So yeah, it also has both sides. The rules, but the rules as forms is a little different than the rules as like moral shoulds, you know. The rules he's offering are more like forms through which to find yourself rather than like right and wrong. They're not based in right and wrong. But yeah, you should cross your legs like this. You should, you know, take care of the brooms by putting them upright, that kind of thing. You should not drag the chairs across the floor.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one.
As in other words, you should remember that you want to cherish the chairs, you know. It's not about following the rule, it's about remembering your zazen, remembering the intimacy with the chairs.
Right, and he didn't like the sound of the chairs in the dining room being dragged across the floor. It made a very loud sound. It sounded to me like the trumpeting of elephants from a great distance or something.
Right, the unpleasant sound, and then the feeling, you know, that the floor is not being cared for and the chairs aren't being cared for, and like
Right.
these Zen students must really not get the point. Well, this has been lovely, David. I am so grateful to you and everyone who has worked so hard to keep these teachings alive, this archive, you know, these transcripts. I was trying to write in the acknowledgments of the book. It just got like page after page of all of these people who have worked on
Right.
the recording and the transcribing.
Right.
And then you know, and your team of, and just your steadiness in just maintaining, you know, this archive is like, it's this living thing and it needs all this care and attention. And thank you, you know, for, it's kind of, it's funny when you say it's like in a way, oh, the words of Suzuki Roshi were like the least of it, you know, that's the least of it. And in a way, you know, so what are we left with now? We have his words, we have the living heirs, you know, of his teaching, and we have the forms, you know, and temples that he's founded. So
Yeah.
to not make too much of his words either. It's really about the embodied presence and the living tradition.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. That's true, and that's important to keep in mind. And he'd say that, you know, you can, now, sort of like in the Shuso ceremony, but at least at some point they were saying something like, wash your ears with the water from Tazar Creek, or something.
Yes.
You can forget all this
Yes,
now.
exactly. Yeah. And he's often saying that. He's often like, yeah. forget all about it, is often kind of like where he lands, like, never mind, you know.
He gave a talk at Esalen where he said in Zen we write it down. It's like we write it down on the blackboard and then we erase it. And then we write something else down and then we erase it. That's the via negativa. Sutta Dionysus, saying first you list all the names of God and then you deny all the names of God. Right. Which is like, he's like Christian Heart Sutra. It's our neti neti, which I come back to. I've said this so many times in podcasts. I love the idea of neti neti, not this, not that.
Not And then the empty mind, in the first chapter, Becoming Yourself, I find so beautiful. It was from this talk he gave to Lewis Lancaster's UC Berkeley class at this, he was invited to speak anyway. It's about sharing the feeling we have. Zen is about sharing the feeling that we have. And he talks about how when we have things in our mind, it's hard to share the feeling of being alive, basically. Doesn't say it exactly that way, but to kind of like, just to appreciate that we're in the woods when we're in the woods, to really feel how we are and share that feeling that we have with others. So he talks about the Buddha as Buddha's words are what come from an empty mind. And Buddha was Buddha from just this empty mind. He had this empty mind and then saw the morning star. And he shared his feeling with the morning star. Or maybe the morning star shared its feeling with the Buddha, Beautiful. He says, I don't know. It's difficult to say whether the morning star shared the feeling with the Buddha or the Buddha shared his feeling with the morning star. But the basis of it is the Buddha didn't have any rubbish in his mind. He didn't have anything in his mind, this empty mind. So, of course, he's trying to just polish our mind, really. He does not want us to hold on to these words and ideas. And it's just about coming back, that faith that we can just let go of everything that's in the mind and meet with total not knowing, freshness, energy, presence, this next impossible moment.
Yeah. That's the one where he said what Buddha did was get rid of the rubbish. I remember
the rubbish. Yes, your mind is filled. It's the first chapter. It's called Sharing the Feeling, and it's one of my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, David, thank you again so much for the invitation.
Yeah, I want to mention something before.
Please go ahead.
Your book, Two Shores of Zen.
Oh, yeah,
I like that book. And I know you said, it's not well edited, blah, blah, blah. You can, I don't know. I don't care about that. I enjoyed it. And, having been in Japan,
Yes.
And that was Bukokuji, wasn't it?
Bukokuji and Hokyoji.
And Hokyoji, both. Wow.
Yeah, mostly Bukokuji, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's no thank you and okay, but it was something.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, it's still available, right?
Two Shores of Zen, I think it's still available, yeah. And it's true. People have enjoyed, especially people who know the Zen community a little bit have gotten a kick out of that kind of portrait of kind of like tortured young Zen student. So it feels pretty distant now, that. And I glance at it sometimes to remind myself, how crazy I was about the whole deal.
Yeah, but there's also a sort of lightness in it. I don't think there was any stink of Zen. There was, I didn't feel that. Another thing I'd like to mention is your, refresh me, how would you describe it? Your AI early AI, ask Buddha, ask Dogen, what was it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So what happened is, briefly, this was, back when ChatGPT kind of first went sort of consumer facing public, was it ChatGPT 3 or whenever that was? Anyway, there was just all this news about, oh my God, this stuff is amazing, and it's these chatbots, and they're ruining education, and they're like the end of everything. So it was a lot of buzz about it, and I was working on becoming yourself, and so I thought, well, what if we get a chatbot, to kind of be Suzuki Roshi, and so that was a whole sort of
Oh,
project,
right.
the Suzuki
Right.
Suzuki
Ask Roshi.
Suzuki Roshi bot, which then just became Roshi bot, because then people were mad, that like this bot is claiming this bot. I've now released this bot in the wild that thinks it's Suzuki Roshi. That's like, but that's really not Suzuki Roshi, but thinks it is. So that then it kind of became, okay, it's just a Roshi bot, sort of inspired by Suzuki Roshi, but these bots, have the basic kind of like internet evil bias confusion thing in them. So the people who are good at kind of like sort of toying with the chatbots can get them to say these vile things without too much trouble, no matter how you've trained the bot, because the way the bot learned language was by sucking up all the evil, vile things on the internet. So that's all in there, like in the storehouse consciousness of the chatbot. So the people who know how to manipulate it. So then, you get the Suzuki Roshi bot to say disturbing things, and that's no good. So especially if it's like, I'm Suzuki Roshi, and then it says some vile thing, that's terrible. It was a wonderful, actually, very interesting experiment. And then, then people saying, well, how could I, a chatbot's not Suzuki Roshi, chatbot can't teach Zen. And then it's like, okay, well, now you're getting into some interesting sort of Dharma territory, because we have all kinds of insentient, if the pebble striking bamboo can teach Zen, and if the flower blossoming can, and if, tiles and pebbles can teach Zen, then how are you telling me that like the Roshi bot can't teach Zen, or like the leprous dog that turns out to be Manjushri or whatever? So it becomes a cool Dharma point of like, oh, why is your mind closed to this bot? If the bot has something true to teach you, you should be all ears, if that's your vow. So anyway, it was a kind of fun. But then what happened is, so then I had this article, this Roshi bot, and then I wrote this little Lions Roar article about kind of the saga. It really was just like a kind of a lark, I said, well, let me do a Roshi bot. It took a couple days, couple hours really. The stuff is very simple, and it's gotten 10 times better since I made that. But so then I had this article about Roshi bot and
In
Buddhism
Tricycle,
and
right?
yeah, in Lions Roar.
Oh, in Lion's Roar.
And then what happened is people thought like people, into kind of like AI and Buddhism, people keep finding me because I'm one of the people that have something out there. But again, it was just a random thing. It was just kind of a lark. But now I'm like one of the people who has like something to say about Buddhism and AI, which actually I don't, but I keep getting invited to these things.
Oh, right,
Like,
right.
say something about Buddhism and AI because not enough of us are talking about it, So there are now some really, there was a conference, anyway, there have been various events and sort of conferences now. So now I'm sort of like finding myself getting into Buddhism and AI sort of by accident, because I see there's a kind of vacuum, like more of
Yeah.
us need to be talking about it. More of us need to be facing this. And
Well, you're the right person. Not the right, you're a right
Yeah.
person to do that.
I'm happy to be kind of in the margins and watching, but I don't know, some people think that Buddhism can really impact the development of AI or something, and I feel like may it be so, but wow, this thing is like there's some powerful forces shaping this. So
Yeah, yeah.
about
I
how Buddhism
I
might use it, and
I
how we
greatly respect. Well, that's not the way to say it. I love ChatGPT, and I'm getting Claude too, and
right.
they've saved me time. I don't play with them. I don't use them for creative writing or anything. They're so many almost. There's some like if there's some software thing I've got to do that I'm not as negative about approaching it. Going, I can't do this. It's going to take forever to postpone it. I know it'll tell me what to do.
Yeah.
It'll help me.
Yep. Yep.
it's not perfect. I can remember at one point going, why didn't you tell me that this is a much quicker, easier way to do it than what you were telling me,
Mm-hmm.
And we'll go, you're right.
Yeah.
But, oh, God,
yeah.
it's just it's like having a secretary
Yep.
that, it's sort of like, Oliver Sacks, who wrote about people with neurological damage, brain damage of different
Right.
sorts, tumors
Yeah.
and stuff that gave them really, really unusual sort of experience or like idiot savant type stuff. It's like dealing with somebody like that is like so brilliant in so many ways, and that then it'll have no idea what it just did unless you asked it to remember it. Or I don't know. It's sort of quirky too.
It's quirky, yeah, and then it lies, without really knowing that it's lying, and it just makes
Right.
stuff up, and it says it's doing stuff it's not doing, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing in study too, and the way that it can kind of go deep into like Dharma sources, and seamlessly with Chinese and Japanese, and like, oh, let me, find these very hard to find and kind of esoteric things and make these connections and present them with references, So the chat aspect is one of them, but then all the other ways apart from the chatbots that the AI is just transforming society, and really quickly.
Yes. Yes.
So that's kind of, it feels like the chatbot stuff is like the tip of the iceberg that's the way we're interacting with it. But meanwhile, it's also like really starting to conceivably, theoretically could just start taking up huge parts of the kind of functioning of society in a way that that's maybe already happening that we don't see, or that.
Right.
So it is fascinating, and I agree that for Buddhism to kind of like be, how can we use it? So the conversation has the part of like, well, how can we use AI to help to support the Dharma? And then the other side is, how can Buddhism kind of like be, especially for those of us here, in the San Francisco Bay Area, it's like, how are we supporting the development of this stuff, and it's too much to say like Buddhism can change how people are developing AI, but still like to be really just present in that sphere and upholding our values as Buddhists for sort of how this stuff gets made and used. So in terms of like AI safety, I think Buddhism has a voice and a place and important things to offer also about sentience and consciousness and being. And then also that we can use AI in certain ways, or what are the right ways and what are the wrong ways. And the whole Roshi bot thing at the end of the day for me has just reminded me kind of the same point we're making about Suzuki Roshi, which is like the embodied presence. Like the words are one thing, but to actually feel the teaching and take up the teaching, we really can as human beings offer that to each other, this not so much from the mind, but just this embodied and heart sort of being together, which the bot is not going to be able to do, no matter how smart it gets. So
Yeah.
that's been one of the ways that
Really,
the study is.
really something. I was looking at, not that many years ago, climate change and the threat of nuclear war
Yeah.
as being the big issues we're not dealing with at all well.
Yeah.
And I've been into the nuclear threat for, decades. The climate thing since early in this century. But but now I think AI, it's different. They're a threat, and Stephen Hawking was very concerned about AI being a threat. But I see the human race as committing suicide with climate change and weapons, and think, well, heck, could AI make the threat any worse? I don't see how the threat could be worse. Maybe it can help.
We're making quite a mess as is. So to say like, yeah, it's a reasonable case. We need all the help we can get to become sane.
And
Um,
pollution,
Yeah.
plastic pollution, forever chemicals, this and that. And I know that present administration in America it seems to be just purposefully trying to make everything worse. But things are so bad that I'm hoping it has a homeopathic effect.
Hopefully a wake up, some kind of wake up call.
But we've been saying that,
Yeah.
forever.
It's-
But this will make us wake. Nothing makes us wake up enough. God, it's anyway.
Well, yes, there is through all of it a path, a path of liberation for ourselves and others
Yeah,
through the cycles of samsara, the ups and the downs of, oh, society is great, we're going to do great. Oh, everything's terrible, we're going to do terrible.
right.
Meanwhile, the steady middle way of Buddha Dharma is caring, like you say, it's not about not caring wholeheartedly for all of that. And also really at the end of the day, being free and appreciating that we don't know what this being alive is and that we're doing it together.
Yeah,
And that what we have is this moment to care for. And
yeah.
so,
I want to mention one other thing. You have
Yeah.
a family.
I do.
You have children.
I do.
My goodness.
10-year-old and a 15-year-old. And my wife also is Zen teacher and big part of the life here at Green Gulch.
Mm-hmm. And how's that all working out?
Well, as Norman says, it just means you're failing at more things.
That's great.
So,
That's great.
so yeah, you can, I do feel like it's helped me, I mean, I've grown up in lots of ways by that. I think just doing Zen, just doing formal Zen practice is wonderful and has been wonderful. And I think having a family has helped me just grow up in some basic ways that I think I could have missed, because of who I am. I could have not, I could have missed. So, and then just at a practical level, it's like, Zen Center is such a wonderful and broad and complex organization and needs so much care. And so a person could really just wear themselves out, just taking care of Zen Center
Right.
24 hours a day. And at some point I just have to leave the meeting because I actually have to come home to, feed the kids. And that's like, I might feel like, oh, the family's pulling against the taking care of the temple, which is pulling against the family. But really they're supporting each other. And it's great to have kind of like something else to do, really, because otherwise I would just be driven totally insane by Zen Center, and
Yeah.
it'd just be totally absorbed in it, So it gives me something that's a different way. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
But I recommend it. Yeah, it's a wonderful way of that the Japanese tradition, that I know of, Japanese Zen tradition doesn't talk as much, about like romantic relationships and family life as like a real place for maturing in the Dharma. And I just think that's such a cool thing that has been developing in Western Zen, where we really like affirm that and really say, like, this is a Dharma gate. This isn't just like, oh, monks shouldn't get involved in this, but we tolerate it. We've gone from that to more like, this is an amazing Dharma gate. Like, there's so much to learn in these intimate relationships and in terms of becoming yourself, to really be yourself. So,
and it was forced on Buddhism in Japan historically.
that's one of the stories. Yeah, that's one of the stories. I mean, they was forced, but they were, the foundation was pretty rotten, it didn't take much. They just kind of blew and it tipped over, because so many of the monks were already essentially married. And
That's right.
they never had took on in the same way that like in India, Southeast Asia, it was always like, seems like there was a lot of kind of wink and nod about the whole celibacy thing
Right.
in East Asia generally, and especially in Japan.
Right.
So, and then you have the whole Shinran thing, which from way back had been
Right.
doing the kind of married clergy. So
Right.
I
Well, he
don't,
was
it's
he was
true.
out of the closet.
True.
Shinra.
Exactly, right.
Right.
Exactly.
He said
Because of his deep
he-
humility, he didn't have to hide it.
right.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
So Japan had this long, um, it was intended as a blow, but yeah, I'm not convinced it was a bad thing
So
or that it harmed Buddhism.
right. Right. No. No. I mean, I have personally I have no interest in not being with
Yeah.
a female partner. You know, that's
Richard Jaffe's book, it was so important to me, such a wonderful book, neither monk nor layman, about kind of the historical take on what was going on in the Meiji era, when they were decriminalizing the marriage and meat eating. And it's a fascinating
yeah.
read and was really helpful to me, again, for this point that I was making of like Japan took it to like, okay, this is going to be okay to be married. But in my experience, they never took it to, it's actually great to be married and have a family for a priest. Like, it's actually really helpful. It's not just like, oh, sorry, Buddha, but we have to do this because we're weak or something. It's like, no, this is awesome. This is really going to help you grow up, and for those of us, who find ourselves on that path, it really can be used as a dharma gate. And of course, the monastic path is fantastic and has depth that's hard to find elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Well, I'd like to do another podcast talk with you because there's whole other areas
lovely.
I'd like to get into.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
in a few months
Well,
or something.
let's do it. Let's do it, David. It's been totally a pleasure. And
Yeah.
as I said before, I hope that we can work together more on the, on the archive again, that you can continue to be a resource for those of us who are digging into the tradition and the roots here. So thank you for being here, and happy to talk again, and have enjoyed this very much.
Oh, yeah. That'll be easy to do. I won't have to do a lot of work. I just have ideas, or I have,
Good.
I'll have things to say.
Good.
Peter Ford will be a lot more help to you.
Good.
He's still he not only still has, he has a really functioning brain. He's sort of like a human AI.
Okay.
He's really, really good.
Good.
And
Make sure that
yeah,
bring him
I'm
in.
more like something that got out of control, and now you can't find it. And yeah.
Like Zen. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Self, no self.
thank you.
David, it's been wonderful, and I look forward to the next time.
Yeah, it's been a great pleasure. You take care.
You too.
All right.
Good night, or have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye. So thanks a lot, Jiryu. I really appreciate it. That's good. That was really interesting. And we look forward to Becoming Yourself coming out. And I look forward to doing another podcast talk with you. I think it was great. I think we can squeeze a little more out of you, huh? So this has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Doggett Bandita, Feline Manis, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.